Hey, everybody. It's Eric J. Olson once again coming at you live for Lunchtime Live. And today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Jennifer Jas, who happens to be the editor of my upcoming book, $1 Million Journey.
Woo!
Hey, Jennifer, how you doing?
Hey, Eric, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely. Wait, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, I own a business called Words with Jas. So I am a book editing service and editing of other business materials. So I help writers and authors sound brilliant and publish materials that are engaging, error-free, and connect with their audience. So I loved working with you on your book, Eric. Your book was also a book that I am interested in reading as a business owner. So I found lots of value in your book for me as well.
Oh, that's awesome. And hopefully you will make me sound brilliant because I need the help.
I did my best, Eric.
Yeah, I know. I didn't give you much to work with.
No, actually, your book was very well written. I can say that honestly.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
So, how did you get into book editing? I'm sure there's a history there. Where did this journey for you start?
Book editing really started back in 2006 when I was working in corporate communications for the company that makes Little Debbie's, right? This is a stretch. But at the same time, a man in my church who had served in World War II knew that I worked in communications. And he said, if I record my life story into these little tiny cassette tapes, will you type them for me? Right? So he could give it to his family and friends. He had served in the Merchant Marines in World War II, so he had a really fascinating life story. He just wanted to share with his family. So I listened to all his cassettes and typed it. And then in the course of typing it, I thought, this could be better organized, right? So I asked him if I could adjust his stories, reorganize them a little bit, make them a little stronger rather than just typing out his words. And ended up creating this really nice book that he didn't publish, he just printed out for his family. So that was the start. That made me feel like, wow, I could do this for other people. So I did start out doing a few memoirs for people, just kind of word of mouth, people I knew who were wanting to give something to their family. But from there, I continued to work in the field of corporate communications for 15 plus years. Then I was editing books on the side. So nights and weekends for most of that time. I was, going to my day job and then coming home and editing books. But it really branched out from the memoirs to really solid nonfiction books has been my absolute love. So I went on to one of those websites where freelancers get connected to people who are looking for freelancer services. And that's where it really took off professionally. And I was able to leave corporate employment 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, just celebrated my 3-year anniversary for Words with Jas, where I've been editing full time ever since. Should have done it a long time ago.
That is great. That's a great story. And it's actually very, very similar to my journey, all the way up to Array Digital. It started where I had basically a corporate job and I was doing stuff nights and weekends, just like you. And then I went on to Elance, which has become Upwork. And
Right.
I started getting clients there. You know the story because you edited it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's the exact same thing. And then at some point, I stopped using those websites that kind of connect, the marketplace websites, and I got my own clients. And it sounds like you've kind of done the same thing at this point.
Exactly. Yes, I loved reading that in your book and hearing, you went from that same place where I was, and then now you have, $1 million business. Right. So you made that leap. Yeah. So yeah, that was great to see that in your book.
Cool. Yeah, very, very similar. So I found Jennifer because I needed help for sure. I had written the book and I had gone through twice and I tried to organize it. I did organize it better myself. And then I read through it and I fixed errors that were just really obvious errors. Typos where Google Docs underlines it in red. I guess clearly something I needed to spend a little bit of time fixing. So I fixed errors like that, but I knew that I needed a little bit more help, and I knew that I wanted to be kind of, a lot more polished than something that I would just normally whip up. And so I was researching for editors, and a lot of the people that I came across were people that had a lot of editing experience, but in lots of different industries. So it was like, baby books, romance novels,
Mhm.
the occasional business book or nonfiction, like biography kind of a book. And I was like, I don't know if that's for me. And then when I found Jennifer, this is all she does, which is business. Well, nonfiction. Is it business only or nonfiction?
It's nonfiction only, but I aim for business, leadership, and self-help fields and health. So yeah, broadens it a little bit, but all those relate to business in some way, right?
Yeah. But yeah, like for me, as the customer in this scenario, when I went to Jennifer's website, which is wordswithjas.com, and as a matter of fact, I'll bring it up right now. What I saw was like, oh, this person's for me. When
Mhm.
how far along in your journey did you kind of niche down into nonfiction?
I would say it didn't take long. It was probably just a few years in, because I was at the beginning, of course, I was hungry for projects, right? And I was saying yes to anything, at some pretty long hours for low pay in the beginning, right? Just wanting to get experience, get um, be able to say that I've edited these books and list the names of them, that kind of thing. So I took on a lot of other things. So I regularly now turn down books that just are not quite. I'm not the right editor. There's a better editor for someone, and that relationship is so important to have someone who can work with the author to specialize in what they're writing about and know that type of message. It's not that I just turn someone down. I refer them to someone else. I have lots of my editor coworkers that we've never met in person, but we regularly refer work to each other when we know that there's someone else who's a better fit. I love
Yeah.
to aim for books that shift thinking. Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Keep going.
Books that shift thinking and shift action. So not just, put something great out there in a book and shift someone's thinking about something, but books that lead people to shift what they're doing and make a change. So that concept lends itself well to business type of books that are really helping people to shift what they do, like your book, shift how they run
Yeah.
their business so it can be really successful in an efficient amount of time.
That's great, and I appreciate that, and I think that that getting to that niche decision point
Mhm.
is difficult in the beginning, and I know we've struggled with that. I struggled with that myself, and then later in a partnership with Kevin Daisy, who's the partner
Mhm.
here at Array Digital, we struggled with that, and we're going down that path now. But it's really difficult when you get opportunities from all over the place, and you're like, are we really going to say no to these opportunities? But
Mhm.
what we kind of have concluded is it's way better to say absolutely yes to the ones that you want versus, yeah, I mean, I
Yes.
guess I could do that. And at some
Yes.
point you get past the anything for money phase. Is that kind of what you found as
Yes.
well?
Exactly. Yes, because if I said yes to too many things, and at this point, it's still my business is still me. Although your book has inspired me, Eric, to be ready soon to hire my first employee. I really need to expand what I offer and have other people helping me with it, so it's not just me doing all the work. So anyway, thank you again for that inspiration. But where was I going with that?
Well,
I kind of
I'll
lost my
tell you what,
thought in the
it's all
process
right
of
because
talking about your book.
I wanted to shamelessly plug your work here. So this is the upcoming book, $1 Million Journey.
Looks
And
great.
yeah,
I love it.
this is what Jennifer worked
Yeah.
on. I have a copy of it at home, and oops, I forgot to bring it.
Well,
But
my role was small compared to your role of doing all that writing, and I had nothing to do with that fabulous design. So I love that as well. But
so I disagree with you on the editing role versus the writing role. I really do.
okay.
So and here's why. It I sat down in December of 2019. The holidays were coming up, and I was like, I'm going to do something with this dead time. And
Mm,
so I got up and I wrote. So I would write for between an hour and 3 hours for about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. I
mhm.
just pounded it out. Um, so within a month, I got that done. But then it took almost a year to get it edited. And we've edited this thing. I've edited twice. You've gone through twice, well, 2 formal edits. And then we did the final proofreading
Yep.
edit when the illustrator. So let me explain like a few of these different kinds of edits that Jennifer did. So
Yeah.
the very first edit that she did, and by the way, I didn't know any of this stuff until I started looking for an editor, and Jennifer explained all of it to me. And by the way, if I get this wrong, Jennifer, just kind of jump in and correct me.
I will. Yep.
But the very first edit that she did is what's called a developmental edit. Is that okay? And what that is where she reads through the book and she says, "Oh, Eric, I'm going to move this paragraph from chapter 3 to chapter 5 because it just fits better there. And this other paragraph in chapter 1, you need to shorten it. It's just too long, too many details. And by the way, I like how you have these takeaways in the first 3 chapters, but you don't have them in the rest of the book. So you need to write more, Eric." And that's exactly what those were the instructions that she gave me. And now I had my to-do list, and I went back and I filled in the gaps that she told me to fill in. And then she moved the things around like she wanted them moved around. All I had to do was approve it. And then once the writing was, 99 to 100% done, she went through again and did a line edit, word by word, sentence by sentence, and changed, tenses and punctuation and all those little things that, especially, most people, they write emails these days, or maybe they write a paper here and there, but they don't write long form copy. And so you kind of forget a lot of those rules.
Everybody needs extra eyes on it. But if something is an important project to you or an important piece of writing, you really need an editor. I need an editor for things that I write that are important too, because the person is too close to their own writing. They gloss over, the things that could be improved about it. And then, of course, a professional editor is trained in the language and what makes an engaging language and what's accurate, right? So yeah, you're right on with those 2 types of editing. And then there was one more type at the end.
Yes.
We did the proofread.
Yeah. So the line edit was done, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like all the writing and editing is done. And then what happened was I hired the designer, and I didn't know this until very recently, but not only does the designer design the cover, which I'll show that again real quick, but the designer, oops, didn't mean to cut you out there. The designer also lays out every single page of the book. And what they're doing is they're looking for things like, in this paragraph, does this one word drop down to its own line? And they don't like that. And they have a term for that. And so they adjust the spacing of the whole paragraph, and they bring that word back up. And then every page has to have like a header, but and sometimes, they copy and paste like from the manuscript itself, which is in Google Docs or a PDF, and they paste it into their program. And my designer said, look, hey, Eric, you need to have someone proofread this, because it's very likely that I could screw up. And you know how you do like a Control or Command C to copy and paste? He goes, yeah, there's been times where like we've seen, the editor has seen where there's just a V where there's supposed to be a whole paragraph because they didn't quite press down on the Control when they clicked the V for paste. They just hit V. And and also at the same time, I was narrating. So I did the audiobook and I read it myself. And as I was reading through it, I was like, oh, there's a better way for me to say this.
Yeah.
And so
things you stumble on.
Yeah, things that I would stumble on. I'm like, there's more to the story, or there's a better way. And so I would starting to make changes. And so Jennifer had to go through and she had to proof it one more time and proof the back cover.
Yes, at the very least, someone's writing that they care about should be proofread. But definitely with a book, that's obviously a very important thing with someone with their name right there on the front. It should go through at least 2 of those different types of editing, depending on what it needs. But the proofread should always take place at the end, because you don't want your readers to be tripped up by annoying typos in a book, right? It just doesn't look professional.
Exactly. And, these days, especially if you're self-publishing like I am, there is an opportunity for you to make changes if you find an error later and then upload a new version to Amazon. but still, that just means that people have been exposed to, your book, your brand, and
Right.
there were errors in it, and you just want to avoid that in the beginning. So I would rather
Right.
just put in all the heavy lifting up front and get it as close to 100% as we think we can get it, and then hopefully that just remains as
Mhm.
the first edition for forever, until I come out with the second edition. So
Yeah.
well, I definitely appreciate your work, Jennifer, and there will be more books for sure, and I will be asking for more help on that. But there's a couple of things that we talked about beforehand that I wanted to kind of bring up for the audience's perspective or value to bring them more value. I know you have some steps that you can recommend to authors when writing a nonfiction book. Would you
Yes,
be okay
I
stepping
have.
through those?
I am. Let me have it in front of me here. I don't have the steps memorized in the right order. All right, so these are just an overview of the steps. Each one could go into so much detail, and I'm happy to connect with anyone afterwards too and give more detail on these. But here are the 12 basic steps for putting together a book. And let me preface this by saying I'm a book editor. I'm not a publishing consultant that helps people with all the steps. So I'm going to really gloss over, those steps too, but I'm going to include them because they're part of the process. But I focus on the editing part myself. All right, first step is to choose your topic, obviously. But there are some people who say, I want to write a book, or I want to write a book on behalf of my, to promote my business, but I don't know exactly what the topic's going to be. So that's the first step. Choose your topic, and do your research. See what value you have to add. You don't want to just write a book and then throw it out there, and then it's not an important or valuable enough idea that people aren't going to want to read because it's just a big business card for your business or something. You want it to really be something that's valuable and unique, right? And like I said before, shifts thinking and action. So choose your
Yeah.
topic, research it. You can go look at other books online, look at libraries when they're open, and really figure out what would be a good narrow down topic for your audience.
I struggled with that because I knew I wanted to write a book, and for me, my background is digital marketing. It's also starting the company and building it up, and there's other things I could write about if I wanted to, but I kind of struggled with what the topic would be, and then I realized that my passion is in entrepreneurship and helping people grow their business and giving them advice from my mistakes from the past. And then also there's a huge market. So I think you need to look at the market as well. And the reason I say it's a huge market is because I found out that only 4% of companies get to $1 million in revenue, which means that 96% don't.
Right. Yeah, you did a great job choosing a topic because another valuable thing to have in books is stories. And your stories about your past and how you got to where you are now and how you've organized your business, those completely contribute to the overall theme of your book, which is how the reader can get their business to $1 million and beyond. So yeah. Step number 2 is decide the purpose of your book. Seems obvious, but people need to know right when they're starting out, what is this book for? What am I trying to accomplish with this book?
Yep, makes sense.
Yep. Number 3 is rough out the structure and table of contents. So draft the table of contents, I would say. And there's multiple ways people can do this, and people have their own process of, either they mind map it, or they just list it out, or they use the sticky note method, or they gather their friends and talk about ideas, or they do it in a digital document. There's lots of different ways you can do this, but at least draft it out so you can start to gather all your resources and content in each of those areas and put it in the right buckets as it takes shape.
Yeah.
The end table of contents looks a lot different than the first draft.
Yeah, this is something that I didn't do a very good job of. Frankly, I knew I wanted to write. I knew what I wanted to write about, but I didn't have a very clear roadmap, and so I just started writing these stories down, and then I also had to think about, okay, well, this is my story. Why would someone care about this? And that's where I had to change the writing so that it wasn't just my story. It was how people can learn from these mistakes that I made, and then the advice that I give them as well along the way.
Yeah. Joining writing groups or professional organizations. There's a Nonfiction Authors Association, which I would recommend to anyone writing a nonfiction book. I'm not promoting them for any purpose. I'm a part of that group, and they're amazing, and their resources are great. So anything like that can help people find the resources they need to give advice on structuring their book as well.
Great.
Number 4 is the whole big bucket of write your first draft. I mean, that's a lot in step 4, but write your first drafts. And just like you did, you said you set aside a dedicated amount of time each day to write. I highly recommend the timer method to people. So if they want to commit to an hour a day, just for example,
Yep.
set a timer, commit to it, have a specific spot that's an inspiring spot for them, and just get it done. And usually, even if they're not in the mood to write, once they start writing, they get in the flow and they'll continue, sometimes way past the hour. So yeah, write the book.
I would add to that, do it in the morning if you can.
Yeah.
And the reason I say morning is because in the morning, there's usually not a lot competing for your time and attention if you get up early. So, I mentioned that I wrote from, well, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I wrote from about 5 until 7. I would write between 1 and 3 hours a day, but I would get up at 5, sometimes a little bit earlier, which, it may not be your normal time, but if you get up earlier than normal, then you don't have competition for your time. So you can find the time to get that writing in.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm not even up by 7 these days, Eric.
Oh, lucky you.
I need to write a book so I can make myself get up at 5 and do something productive during that time. All right, number 5, name the book. So, and that can also change, and the editor can give input on that as well. There's lots of different methods to brainstorm great book titles, but research it. Yeah. Look up things online, look up words, look up synonyms, and find something that will resonate, and also give a good idea of what the book's about. So.
Yeah, you're like citing all the mistakes that I made, basically, right? Because at first I was going to call it Journey to $1 million, because we have a podcast, which is Journey to $100 million, which is our big vision. Hopefully we'll get there at 2030. That's the goal.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, well, this will just be the first part, Journey to $1 million. And then my buddy, Zach Miller, who was kind of coaching me along the way, he's written a book himself. He said, okay, well, when you spell that out, is it going to be like the number $1 sign, or are you going to actually spell out one, ONE, and then the word dollar? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, and so I actually avoided it by changing the title to $1 Million Journey. And I got rid of a little bit of that brand confusion, Journey to 100 million versus Journey to 1 million. So,
yeah. Number 6, hire a cover designer. Often it's the same as the interior designer, but it's good to have a cover of the book once your title is set and in general what the book is obviously going to be about. Then you can start putting the front cover out there and saying it's coming soon, or coming really soon, or coming really, really soon, or depending on how long it gets delayed, and you have to keep saying that. Yours is coming when, Eric?
Very, very soon.
Very, very soon. Excellent. Number 7, plan for your back-end products. And what I mean by that is that doesn't apply to all books, but it applies to some. So in your book, especially if it's from a business owner writing a book, if you're going to be referring to, in your case, a mastermind group, right? Or to your website or an author page or something else, or your opportunities to speak or something in the back of the book, you want to have all that stuff ready to go. So you want to think about it as you're writing the book, because you'll be promoting it in your book if it's that type of book.
Yeah, it's I've heard it called a call to action in the book.
Yes.
And previous authors have told me that you need to have a call to action not only at the back of the book, but all the way through the book. I chose to save it to the end. But the call to action is, well, like if someone wants more of you as the author, like in my case, I'm writing this book, right? So if someone wants more Eric, how do they get more Eric? And so for us, it's the mastermind called Array Mentors. I considered doing a weekly newsletter, but the reality was I just wasn't like excited about writing a weekly newsletter, and I didn't know if I could commit to that forever, which is basically the commitment. And so, I went with the mastermind, which we already have stood up, and I think it's a good call to action.
I often recommend taking out calls to actions throughout the book, so it doesn't seem like it's a salesy type of book. If it is that type, a business book, still it's fine to put it at the end. But yes, there's a way to do it so it doesn't hit people over the head with it.
Yeah.
Number 8 is self-edit and beta readers. I combine those. So besides just writing the draft and then handing it off to someone, the author should go through it multiple times themselves, and also ask other people in their target audience or beta readers to read it. I could go into more detail on that, but I know we're getting short on time. But before it even goes to professional editing, it should go through the author and then people who will give them real feedback.
Yeah, totally agree.
Number 9.
I did the exact same thing. Yep.
Good. Number 9 is hire a professional editor. So that's where I or my comrades come in. Yeah, we've already talked about some of the reasons why people would hire an editor, but if you want it to be engaging, accurate, meet your goals, and you want someone, to have an eye on the flow, every book must have an editor, or
Yes,
it runs the risk of having, a bunch of negative reviews and errors in it. So.
Yeah.
And of course, we talked about
books. I've read self-published books, and it's very obvious that the person did not hire an editor. They did not hire an illustrator either, because the book's not laid out properly and there's typos everywhere. Right. It's a put off.
Right. Most people are not big thinkers and graphic designers and great writers all combined. So they need to hire professionals to do those parts. Number 10 is hire the interior designer. It could be the same as the cover designer. And then I'm going to just skip through these. Number 11 is publish the book. And obviously there's different methods to do that. There's the traditional publishing, which only a very small percentage of people get into the big publishing houses. There's the indie publishing and small presses, and then there's the self-publishing. And number 12 is marketing and promote the book, marketing and promotions. So I work with some excellent professionals in those areas and often recommend to authors, to other people, because that's not my area. I just focus on the editing. But yeah, you can't, a lot of authors think they write a book, they publish it, they put it out there, and then they sit back and wait to see, the numbers of sales. And unless they're promoting it, no one's going to find it except their friends and family. So promotions are the big thing.
Yeah. And also pre-promote it, right? So you need to tease it.
Yes. That's right.
And, one of the things that I did for $1 Million Journey was every time I sat down to write, I would tweet, and I use Twitter a lot. So I would tweet that I just got done writing the first part of chapter 6. Here are the 3 takeaways. I just edited chapter 7, right? And so I kept my audience informed on the progress of the book so that they're on the journey with me, so that when I get done and it's ready for sale, hopefully they'll want to buy it.
I love that. There are some times when writing a book is not the best idea. Do we have another minute for me to?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. When is that?
Yeah, there's times when it's not the best idea. So because there's other ways to share content, and the other ways still need an editor also, I would say. But it could be that there are short books, mini books. You could do a booklet. I mean, these are other ways professionals can show their expertise without having to, sit down and write a full-length book. If they don't have enough words that they can write on that topic and have it all be compelling, then they can put it into a shorter format book. Obviously, blogs, other digital ways to get their content out there and show their expertise, like the videos, courses, podcasts, presentations, and speaking. So there's other ways that business owners can get their messages out there without writing a full-length book. But any of those things that they produce and anything that they write, they should repurpose it to lots of different areas, right? You know about repurposing. Yeah, don't reinvent all those great words you wrote. Share them in multiple ways and reach people in different ways.
Completely agree. Well, that was awesome, Jennifer. I appreciate your time. The 12 steps were fantastic. And like I said, those are pretty much all the mistakes that I made. I wish I would have had the 12 steps before I actually met you. But this was really, really good. Actually, we do have a comment here from Phil. I have a friend who is planning to write a book, and I will connect him with Jennifer Jas. Look at that. All right.
Nice.
That's awesome, Phil. All right, Jennifer. Get ready for an intro from
Eric.
Phil.
All right, I will.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yep.
Okay. Bye-bye.